time to get another batch into the freeze dryer. And the freeze dryer is still cold because the number one child just did that candy, so we didn't shut it off because it didn't need defrosting. So just going to get more things out of the freezer. We have chili. Well, we have quite a few things still. The other people's food still up on this shelf. But I'm going to do another batch of either refried beans or chili or a combination of the both. So just trying to get a few things done. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 2 halves. That's almost enough for a whole load right there with the refried beans. Get the trays, the pre-chilled trays. I need to get these de-panned and into bags down there, but until then, that's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and go with a couple of blocks of chili to finish that tray up. Tray 1. I'm going to start with the blocks of refried beans, and they were 1 pound blocks. So 1852. Tray 2. Same thing on this one. Tray 3. Now for this one, I'm going to go ahead and use one of the half blocks of chili. So one of the little half blocks of chili, 1843. And tray 4. I'm going to go ahead and do this last block of refried beans along with another full block of chili and a half block of chili. 1843. The blocks of chili will go back into the freezer to wait for another batch. So next, we'll see if we can get thermometers in all these. I'm going to have to lift it a little bit to get it in there, and then it'll just have to rest on the block of chili. That'll be okay. Those are all ready to go into the freeze dryer. And again, you don't need to put thermometers in there, but I like them. I have the 8 pounds of refried beans and the 2 pounds of chili ready to go in. So I'm starting at the bottom, work my way up. There's tray 4. Okay, I need to make sure I get a good seal on there because it's good and cold already. Going to use the little palette knife. There we go. I got a little spot right there. I think I need to wipe it off. It's got a good ring around the seal, so I don't have to worry about the air getting in there and the moisture from the air freezing around that ring and causing a problem when the vacuum starts. Everything's ready. I won't have to give it a lot of time because it's already so cold in there from being on for a while already from the other batches. I am going to be changing out the filters on the vacuum pump filtering system, but since I have that valve on it, it's separate, so I can have it drain while I'm getting this cold. I'm going to start draining this so I can replace these filter elements again. It's been about 26 or 27 batches since I've changed these out. And this pump normally needs to be drained and refilled every batch or two, depending on how much moisture is in it. But it's been 25 times because I have this system. Oh, and I'm gonna let some of this out too. So this will slowly drain while the other part's still going, so it can happen at the same time. This is the new piece that I printed. I don't know how that's going to work, so hopefully I printed it the right size. I printed the inside diameter of this is the same as the outside diameter of the piece that's already on there. But I didn't need to make it that diameter the whole distance. I could have just had it just the end of it so that it will seal, and the rest of it could have been slightly wider to make it easier to put on. Then I'm just rolling the paper towel material on it, and as soon as I get that on, we'll be giving it a test. So I like the idea, I'm just not sure if I got it exactly right. And then I need to make a piece to tell me the diameter to roll the paper towels. So it's a little bit bigger than this, and so I need to print something that tells me the exact correct size. So I'll measure that when I put that together. So I'm just trying to get it nice and snug around there. When I get that filled, we'll go to the other side and put it on. So I'll see you over there. Well, this is the first try for this particular filter piece. So my hope is that this portion can just stay on there, and that the new filter material will just slide up on there. I'm just taking some paper towels and wiping that out. So let's see if this will fit. Okay, it does. Starts out well. There we go. I would like it to go up a little further. Well, that's not perfect, but I'm going to go ahead and use that on this first one. I'll make, when I print some more, I'll make it a little bit looser on most of it. So that won't have it as low as I would like, but it'll be good enough. Okay, now I'll do this second one. Well, let's see what this one will do. Again, I'm going to have to print new ones that are a little bit looser. Will this one not even fit? There it goes. Darn it. Is there a lip on the other end or something? Dang it. Well, that didn't work out. I have to reattach that piece. So it's too tight. I'm going to have to print new ones, but this will work for this batch. It's just that, yeah, a little bit too tight. It doesn't need to be snug all the way down, but it'll still work for this batch, and then it's going to be a little bit of a hassle to change it out the next time. I'm going to have to pull this off again. But I'll get it going, and that'll be okay for a few batches. Because what I'm trying to do is so I don't have to unscrew this, I can just slip one on and off, and it's almost there. Oh, we'll just get this back into place. Come on. And we'll get it refilled. And that's all there is to that one now. We'll make a new one. Got them filling up. I am going to have to reprint that piece. I just made it too tight. This one, I had a real struggle getting it on. I had to remount the inside of the hole. This one basically only made it that far. So I will print new ones and try again, because I like the concept, because then I can have them pre-rolled and just slide them on and switch them out real quick. But I did a poor job on measuring. Well, they were inside. I couldn't really measure them, so I had to try to guess to see if I could remember it right. Anyway, I didn't. But anyway, it's almost filled back up, and then it'll be ready to restart. Well, and actually it can be running during this because you can just turn off the valve on the vacuum pump. As soon as it's filled up, we'll get it started again. The batch of refried beans and chili has been waiting now for about 9 hours after it finished its cycle. And, you know, I should have been down here hours ago, but I wasn't. So it's just been sitting here and running with just the cooling mode. Now, people ask, is it better to just add a whole bunch of time so it's still in freeze drying mode until you come and get it? Well, I don't know. I don't have near enough data to know, is it better for the machine to not stop and then restart, because now I need to rewarm it before I take things out because it's -40 in there, or lower. So I need to take things out before I even take them out to weigh them, because you would just have condensation on everything immediately and you'd be adding water to it. And that's a bad thing. So if I know it's only going to be an hour or two, I will add more time, and so I'll be there when it finishes. But I knew it was going to be 8 or 10 hours on this, and so I like to just let it stop. Plus, on this one, this was another batch of mostly refried beans, and I'd done one just a couple of batches ago, and that one finished in 38 hours. So I put this one so that it would also be about 38 hours, so I could test that. After I rewarm it and then weigh it and then add a couple more hours for the dry check, I'll take the 38 hours as the finish time if it doesn't lose any more weight. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I let it stop at about 38 hours. And so it was about 38 hours, 24 minutes. So right now, and then the other part of the equation is the electricity. So right now it's using about 280 watts for the electronics and the cooling unit on the freeze dryer. When the cooling unit is running and the vacuum pump is running, then it's about, well, we can check it. I think it's about 550, 580, so maybe 300 watts more than that, 250, 300 watts for the vacuum pump. Plus, if it's still running on a cooling cycle, that means the heater trays are coming on, and that bumps it up to about 1350 watts. So that's considerably more power would have been used. So this is using about 1 kilowatt of power about every 4 hours. However, if I'd been running the vacuum pump and heater system, it would have been 2 or 3 times as much. So I do have to now warm it, and it's going to turn those heaters on, but they would have been on the entire time the other way, or cycling on and off to keep that temperature, so they're not actually on 100% of the time. They're cycling on and off to try to hold that temperature. But this way it just lets it cool down. It'll only take a half hour to an hour to warm the food up to where it's safe enough to take it out without condensation. I like to get it to at least 60 to 80 degrees before I take things out. And that's one of the advantages of having the thermometers in the food. The machine's display is going to say that that temperature probe is going to be warm in just minutes after I turn it on, because the temperature probe on this machine is between the heater pad and the shelf. So it's literally at the warmest possible spot to check. It tells me nothing about the temperature of the food. So we'll get this rewarmed and then check it for weight as soon as it is warm. Okay, so I'm going to add more dry time. On some of the newer machines, I think it says warm trays. So I'm going to more dry time. The drain valve is still closed. It's still under a pretty decent vacuum. And that's another thing, I guess. If I understand it right, the oilless pumps don't have a check valve. So I don't know if that's true or not. You could let me know. On the oil type pump, there's a check valve So when I stop, or when the vacuum pump stops, it keeps this under vacuum. So I don't have to worry about air going in there hot, well, relatively hot, room temperature, moist air getting in there, because it's got a check valve to prevent the air from coming back in. Okay, so drain valve is closed, continue, and it says that it's negative 55 right now, negative 56. So it says that it's about a negative 55, 56, so it's really cold in there. Now, the power usage right now, it's already starting to drop. So when it first restarts for this part of the cooling, or the restart, then it turns on everything at once, and it's the highest possible usage. And so it hits about 1500 watts for a few seconds. And then as the vacuum is pulled, it starts dropping. And then once the temperature's up, then the heaters will turn off, and then it will drop considerably from the 1300. So the 1300, that's with everything running. That's the heaters, the cooling unit, and the vacuum pump. So it's the worst case scenario as far as the power usage. So as it pulls a better and better vacuum, the resistance on the motor will go down and the power usage will go down. And then as soon as the tray temperature probe senses that it's warm enough, it'll turn the heater off and start cycling it on and off to try to hold it at that temperature. And then that power use will drop way down. So it's getting close. Once it gets about 120 degrees, the heaters will turn off for a bit and we'll see a big power drop. So that's what we're looking for. 119 degrees, 120 degrees, 121 degrees. So then you can see it drops down to a little over 500 watts. So that's the power difference that it would have had in comparison to turning it off when I'm not using it, or when it doesn't need to be on. Okay, so moving on. So as you just saw, I took them out, weighed them, and then putting them back in for 2 more hours for a final dry check. And it would be so much more informative if I'd turn on the microphone. But no, that's just too difficult. 1 whole button, well 2 actually. Comparing this to the previous batch that was the previous refried bean batch that I'd done, these look very similar. I've given it the same amount of time so far, well 24 minutes more. So we'll check that and see if that's dry. So we'll be right back. Don't go away. It's been a little bit more than 2 hours, 2.5 hours or so, 2 3/4 hours. I needed to add a little bit more time because I wasn't going to be here when it finished with the original 2 hours. So I'd added a little bit more. Anyway, now going to take them out, weigh them, see if they'd lost any weight. And again, if they didn't lose any weight during all this time, that means they were dry, clear back at 38.5 hours. So let's get them out and check them. Going to bypass the rest of the time using the down arrow. Okay, I'm going to open the drain valve.
Huh? Play ball!
And starting with tray 1. It was 1082 and it's 1081. So in 3 hours, that's fine. So if that's the worst one, then we'll call it good. If any of them are more than that, then we'll put them in for a little bit more time. 1078, no change. Tray 3, 1059, no change. And tray 3, or tray 4, excuse me. 1034, again, only one, and it was on the border anyway. So it's all good. So it seems like everything's dry. I'm gonna go ahead and put no defrost. which makes it so much quieter. I'm going to put my defrost baffle in. And for defrosting, you can close the door and use the defrost cycle, but that's going to turn the heated trays on, or the tray heaters on, and I figure why put any wear and tear on the machine. It is a little bit faster, but it's going to take more energy, and it's going to put wear and tear on the machine. I don't know if it's a problem. I don't have any proof that it's good or bad one way or another, but I just do it this way. Our door is always open unless it's operating. So after it's dry, if we weren't going to be using it for a week, say we was going on vacation, we would let the fan run for at least a full day, maybe two, and then we'd still leave the door all the way open the whole time it's not being used. We'll get these trays moved over to the bagging area and then come back and get the time and the power usage, and we'll kind of figure that out. The harvest rate says just over 51 hours, but again, we know that there was a huge portion of it, 9+ hours, that was just waiting for me to come and check it while it was waiting, and then the rest of it was just the dry check. So I'm going to use the 38-24. The 38.5 hours from before all of that extra. Now the power usage. I'm going to do an estimate of the power usage. It shows 30.36 kilowatt hours, but I know again that we had at least 9 hours of just waiting, and so that would be at least 2 kilowatt hours at the usage that it has during that time. And then the rewarming and extra dry time would have been at least another kilowatt hour, maybe 2. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3 off of there. So I'm going to count it as 27.36, and it probably would have been less than that if I'd been prepared to take it out. So then I'll reset it for the next batch. So we've got the trays with the 8 pounds of refried beans and the 2 pounds of chili. So we'll get those weighed and then bagged. I'll get all the thermometers out and get the final weights. Then we can calculate. Well, actually we know what they were. Each one of these was a pound and these were half pounds. So we can bag them that way and then just write the amount of water needed into it. But we can get these weights so we can know how much it lost and get the calculation of what it weighs now. Tray 2, 1070. Tray 3, and that has a mix of chili and refried beans, 1051. And this one's mostly chili, 1035. Oh, I forgot to take that out. Doggone it, now I have to do that part over. 1026. And all of these trays are full, so that's a full 10 pounds. So we'll get the math. We'll get our bags labeled. And this is what we have so far on the bags. We have the batch number with felt pen on the Mylar bag. So if this tag gets lost, we still have that. We can refer back to the notes and still know what's in this bag. Or at least we can narrow it down between 2 things. And then we've got the batch number on here, what it is, the date that it went into the freeze dryer, what it weighed before it was freeze dried, and then how much water we need to add, and that we need to wait a little while before enjoying it. So I did the math. The chili is lighter when it's freeze dried for each pound, so there's less solids in it. So it needs about 350 grams of water back in it to rehydrate it to a pound. And the refried beans needs about 325 grams of water to rehydrate it to a pound. Now, we'll get those bagged, and we'll be bagging them 1 pound, which is about 2 cups this way per bag. I'm using the quart bags. I'll go ahead and start with the chili and get those taken care of first. I'm going to go ahead and carefully move this block of refried beans off there. Oops. It was pretty fragile feeling, so I'm going to have this little flexible cutting mat to put it on in case it breaks apart. Yeah, I'm going to have a glove so I can kind of crunch them up a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and bring the other the other chili block over here. So I'll have the two pounds of chili. So 1 pound here and 1 pound here. All right. Now I'm going to crush these up lightly, but I don't want to crush the beans and the meat up. So I'm just going to give them a light crush, just enough to kind of crush the sauce parts a bit, I hope. Yeah, there, see the beans are staying nice and whole. So it doesn't take a lot of pressure, that's for sure. And this bag should be plenty big for this amount, so I don't have to really worry about crushing it too much. A nice 2 cup or 1 pound of chili in the bag. And it's a good fit, not really oversized. And I didn't have to crush it up too much, because I don't want to do that and destroy the texture. I'll do the same for this other one. Okay, and now the refried beans. And I'll transfer this back on here so it helps contain it. And I'm not really worried about getting a little bit of refried beans and chili mixed in. Those would go together just fine. And we'll do the same thing, except with the refried beans, there's less solid bean pieces in there, very little if any, because it's been blended up. So I don't have to worry about being as careful or as gentle on crushing it. And it doesn't have the same kind of sauces, of course, it's just mostly beans. So it crushes much easier. And as usual, I make sure the table's clean because I often have little spillage. Your table clean, so you'll be able to use the food when you spill it on there. And of course you could just crush it all on the paper and then just pour it in also, especially for loose stuff like this. And if I were trying to powder them, to make them actually into a powder, then I would put them into a Ziploc and crush them in there, or use a rolling pin in there on them in a Ziploc. The refried beans and chili are bagged in 1 quart bags. They're the 7 Mylar bags. And these are my older 1 quart bags, and they were called 1 quart bags, but they're not 1 quart. I don't think I've mentioned that enough. These are only 3/4 of a quart. They just were called 1 quart bags. So they only hold 24 ounces. So sometimes it might seem like I'm over bagging as far as size, but these are a little bit smaller bag. As soon as I use them all up, I'll be going to the true quart bag, and you can see that's about 1 inch taller. And it's about the same width, but it's about 1 inch taller. And I've checked that one, and it can actually hold a full quart of water anyway. But again, that's all this will do, 24 ounces of water. So a liquid that's really fills every little crevice. Okay. Now, I'm going to add 300 cc oxygen absorbers to each one of them, then zipper them shut, and then heat seal them. So even though these are a good zipper, zippering them shut is not a substitute for heat sealing. If the product is low enough, I can just drop it in there and not have to worry about it. If the food is up higher, then I like to tuck it down the side to make sure that I don't end up with it in the seal area or stuck in the zipper. And as soon as I get them in there, I'm going to zipper them shut and push out as much extra air as I can. Okay, with those zippered shut, now we can heat seal them. I like to get them zippered shut quickly because they're going to start absorbing oxygen right away. I mean, of course, it'll ramp up kind of thing, but the sooner I can get it zippered and sealed, the better it's going to be for them. Now I want to make sure that I get the bag smoothed out real nice, and these seem to do a very good job on there. And I'm going to seal it high up on the bag. And get this first one twice to make sure that it's all up to temperature real well. Okay, got a great seal across the top, the full width of the seal. So, and space for 2 or 3 more tries if it has a problem, if there's a wrinkle in it, or if I want to cut it off and use some and reseal it. The one last thing I want to do before I put them in the bin for storage is add a gross weight to each bag, 153 grams. So I'll write that right on the bottom corner of the bag. Now I know that this bag, just like it's sitting here with everything in it and the bag, weighs 153 grams. I can put it on the scale and it should weigh 153 grams. And if it's bouncing between 2 numbers, I'll pick the higher number. If water starts to, or moisture starts to migrate through this bag any appreciable amount, I'll be able to tell just by putting it on the scale. 1% would be 1.5 grams. Okay, so I'll get that on each bag and then they'll be ready for the bins. 153. Okay, those are ready for storage. In the interest of finding out how much will fit in the bins, I've brought bin 4 over again to put this batch in. I've already put 2 additional batches, so this one already has 8 batches instead of just the 6. So this will be the 9th batch, and it'll fit easily. So I think that depending on what the food is, so if they're all quart bags and kind of powdery so that the shape is good, I think you could get 80 or to 100 pounds wet weight of food into each one of these bins. And if you recall, I was only doing 6 batches in a bin. Some of them, though, did take a bigger bag, and so they were pretty full. But on the average, I think we could do all 50 batches into just 7 of these bins. Yeah, it all depends on how you bag them and what they look like. So we'll move forward and show this bin. So this bin, it had 524, so 24 of the series was the last one. So we've added 2 more batches since then, 562 and 563, which have been mostly refried beans, and this one is also. So we'll get those in there, see how we can tuck them in there for the maximum utilization of the space. So finally, that bin looks pretty full. I think we could still get a few more bags in there, but that has 9 batches in there. So that would be about 90 pounds of food, of wet weight. So yeah, we'll keep adding to the various bins until we get to the limit on how much these bins will hold. Yeah, so it's not hitting the top yet, so there's definitely means there's room for more bags. And when I tip it up a little bit, I can see room for at least 4 or 5 more bags. So we'll keep adding. As soon as the freeze dryer is defrosted, we'll get the next batch in there, and I believe it's just going to be another batch out of the freezer. We're still trying to use up all those blocks that were made ahead of time. We have not made a lot of things since then, just trying to use things up. So we'll continue with that. We have our last bag of chili from 2017, so just short of 5 years old. It's a 5-cup bag of chili in one of the original bags that we got. So this thing's been around for a long time, sitting on the shelf at room temperature. Hopefully it's good. So we've got the, and I've got the information on it that originally it weighed 1,305 grams. Now it weighs 327 grams, and that it needs 978 grams of water. So I've got a little bit less than 978. I think I got about 950, 960 grams of boiling water here. And I'm going to rehydrate this thing to go with some ribs. Kind of a side dish. Going to go ahead and open this up. Get the oxygen absorber out of there. And you could rehydrate it right in the bag, but two things. One, these are the old bags without the gusseted bottom, so it doesn't stand up. And two, you can't see it, so it's not as interesting on a video if I pour water in there and then close it shut. You really can't see anything. And then finally, in here I can reheat it more. I can even I could put it in the oven, or I could put it in the microwave and heat it additionally if it needs to be. And this will take a little while to absorb that. And give it a little bit of a stir, and a lot of the parts will float at first until they start to absorb enough water to sink. So make sure that there's no dry spots at the bottom. It looks good. Okay, now we'll cover that and come back and check it later. We'll come back in about, we'll give it 15 minutes and stir it and then check it again. These are pretty big chunks, so it'll probably take at least that long to rehydrate. Okay, giving it about 10 minutes so far. It's looking pretty good. Let's check one of the beans inside. Nope, not finished rehydrating yet for the beans. Gonna stir it up, check the temperature, see if it needs some time in the microwave. It's only about 150, so probably wouldn't hurt to give it more heat. So we'll give it a little bit more heat in the microwave and then give it another 10 minutes or so and then check it. Get a bigger spoon for being able to serve some up. It's nice and toasty still. It looks a lot like the chili we made 5 years ago. And the batches we made 5 years ago tended to be spicy. So you could even put some sour cream on top to mild it out, and some cheese. Ooh, that'd be a nice mug for chili. Oh, and the opening's plenty big. That's good. Made just barely a mess. Hardly counts. For a topping. Okay, could be warm. Oh, that's pretty good. Some of the bigger beans still could be a little dry in the middle, but it seems pretty good. Some chopped onions would be really good on that too, but I don't want to chop any onions right now. So there we go. The chili came out fine. It took probably 20 minutes, 25 minutes to rehydrate with adding some warmth from the microwave. You could rehydrate it faster if you use smaller beans, but I want the bigger chunks of everything. That's all there is for that. Still amazes me every time you have food sitting out for 5 years on a shelf and it's good.
Good, that's the way I like
Okay.
my chili.
And the middle of some of the bigger beans still may be a little bit under rehydrated.
Could have just a little bit.
Should be plenty.
Oh, well then I have just a teeny more.
Okay. What if I can't hear it?
Huh?
I'll put that on there. I will.
No, you won't.
Yeah, I probably won't.